Good day, viewers, and welcome to another presentation of What's Happening Today, presented to you by Rapido News Network. In our first story, we will discuss the evidence and testimonies gathered by the House Committee investigating January 6 attacks on the Capitol. Post that, we will talk about Mr. Biden testing positive for the COVID-19 virus. After that, we will talk about Europe joining the fight against inflation by raising interest rate for the first time in 11 years. And in our final story, we will talk about the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. So let's get started. In our first story, in an hour of highly charged testimony Thursday night, some of former President Trump's top aide described his inaction for nearly 3 hours in the face of the deadly assault on the Capitol on January 6th. Mr. Trump had given a green light to the violence, one said, and another witness testified anonymously that Secret Service agents guarding the vice president had radioed goodbye to family members. He should not have been doing that, Sarah Matthews, the president's deputy press secretary, said. He should have been telling these people to go home and to leave and to condemn the violence. The House Committee investigating the January 6 attack on the Capitol returned to prime time on Thursday with rapid-fire evidence, including more details about the president's angry demand to march to the Capitol with the rioters that members said showed a dereliction of duty by Mr. Trump for failing to call off and even inflaming the assault carried out in his name. For 187 minutes on January 6th, this man, unbridled, destructive energy could not be moved. Representative Benny Thompson, Democrat of Mississippi and the chairman of the committee, said in his opening remarks, "Not by his aides, not by his allies, not by the violent chants of rioters or the desperate pleas of those facing down the mob, he could not be moved," Mr. Thompson further added. Now, in our next story, President Biden tested positive on Thursday for the COVID-19, raising health concern for the 79-year-old president and underscoring how the virus remains a persistent, if muted, threat in a country trying to put the pandemic in its past. Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, said in a statement that Mr. Biden had tested positive for COVID-19. He is fully vaccinated and twice boosted and experiencing very mild symptoms. The president will continue to carry out all his duties fully during this time, she said. Dr. Kevin O'Connor, the president's physician, said in a letter released by the White House Thursday morning that Mr. Biden felt fatigued, had a runny nose and an occasional dry cough, and that his symptoms began on Wednesday evening. The president is receiving Paxlovid, an antiviral drug used to minimize the severity of COVID-19. Officials said that Mr. Biden would isolate in the White House residence for at least 5 days, at which point he will resume normal activities if he tests negative. If he continues to test positive, he will remain in isolation until he tests negative. I anticipate that he will respond favorably, as most maximally protected patients do, Dr. O'Connor wrote in the letter. Ms. Jean-Pierre told reporters that Dr. O'Connor would not take questions directly, as previous presidential physicians have, but will issue written statements about Mr. Biden's condition each day while the president isolates. In a short video posted to Twitter, Mr. Biden thanked people for their concern and said he is doing well, getting a lot of work done. In the video, Mr. Biden is shown standing near a balcony overlooking the south lawn of the White House, dressed in a suit but with no tie. Now, in our next story, as consumer prices across Europe soar at the fastest rate in generations, officials in Frankfurt on Thursday took a powerful step to control rapid inflation amid mounting concerns over an economic slowdown. In the first move of its kind in over a decade, the European Central Bank raised its three interest rates half a percentage point, an increase that was twice as large as telegraphed and follows similar measures taken by the Federal Reserve and dozens of other central banks around the world this year. The global outlook has worsened in the recent months as inflation rises in seemingly every corner of the economy and pandemic-induced disruptions continues to wreak havoc on supply chains. For the Eurozone, the bloc of 19 countries that uses the euro, the diminishing outlook has been particularly acute, with the war on its doorstep, and as the cost of powering businesses, heating homes, and feeding families becomes increasingly unaffordable, the European Central Bank is grappling with profound uncertainty. Christine Lagarde, the bank's president, gave a few signals on Thursday about what comes next. Consumer price in the Eurozone rose on average 8.6% last month from a year earlier. The last time inflation was this bad in the region, the euro did not exist. This has placed the European Central Bank in an uncharted territory. Now, in our final story on the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, the Turkish president on Thursday announced that a signing ceremony will be held on Friday to unveil a deal brokered between Ukraine and Russia, aiming to allow millions of tons of Ukrainian grains to be exported, alleviating a global food shortage. There was no official confirmation from Moscow or Kyiv that an accord had been reached, but only a confirmation that negotiations would continue on Friday. But officials in both capitals confirmed on Thursday that the two sides were getting closer to an agreement. More than 20 million tons of Ukrainian grain has been trapped in Ukraine's Black Sea ports since Russia's full-scale invasion began in February, cutting off grain exports from one of the world's breadbaskets. In a war in which President Vladimir Putin has shown a willingness to target civilian and weaponize energy and food, according to Ukraine, Russia's blockage of Ukraine's grain exports has rippled across the world and has been among the gravest international repercussions of Moscow's attack on its neighbor. Russia's de facto blockade of the Black Sea caused Ukraine's export to drop to 1/6 of their pre-war level. Officials have sought to break the impasse for months as international aid organizations have made increasingly dire forecasts about an increase in food prices and rising rate of hunger and starvation. At the same time, Western countries have treaded carefully, mindful of the risk of ensnaring NATO in the war, pushing back against skepticism that Western weapons will allow them to turn the tide against Russia. Now, that was all for the major news update for July 22nd. Stay tuned for our next update on the ongoing world affairs. We hope that you find this video useful. If you like this video, hit like. And for a continued update on what's happening around the world, consider subscribing. To get notified whenever we post something new, hit that bell icon. If you have any comments or any suggestions for us, please let us know in the comment sections below. Thank you.